In today's video, we are going to look at a smaller policy that was started about 7 years ago. And the purpose of this video is really to, one, show how whole life insurance policies actually perform. It's one thing to have an illustration, which we can see what those numbers project, and they might look fantastic, but then reality hits and the actual values are a bit different from the illustrated values. So we're going to see what was projected or what was illustrated, and then what has actually happened year over year. But then two, we're going to look at a dollar amount of $12,000 per year, an individual who started a policy at age 63, and then also the health rating was not preferred. They received a standard non-smoker rating. So this presents a whole life insurance policy that is not set up for optimal success, meaning we're not looking at $100,000 per year going into the policy. We're not looking at someone who had received a preferred rating or preferred plus rating, the top health category. We're looking at an individual starting a policy a little bit older at age 63, and they had received a standard non-smoker rating. So not a bad rating by any means, but not one of the top ratings. So how has the policy performed? Let's get on into it and have some fun. So we mentioned the first part, starting at 63 years old, non-smoker rating, which the two classes above that are, let's call it preferred plus. Sometimes you'll see this referred to as super preferred or ultra preferred. And then the next step up would be regular preferred. And then we've got standard non-smoker. This individual started their policy in October of 2016. If I recall correctly, I believe the actual start date, the transaction date, was in December. I've got to go back and verify that, but we did backdate the policy. Again, I've got to verify that, but you'll see where I'm going with that when we look at the first year performance. Company selection, Mass Mutual, one of your four major mutual companies. The annual funding, so the original plan, was $12,000 per year for 7 years, and then nothing after that. So we're going to track the actual payments, what the illustrated cash value was, and then what actually happened. So that original illustration, which was run in 2016, what was Mass Mutual's dividend rate back then? Well, if we were to reference their dividend interest rate history, we would see that their dividend rate was 7%. Why that's important to note is anytime you see a life insurance illustration, if it's based on the current assumptions or present dividend interest rate, what it's going to assume is that every single year, that dividend rate, in this case back in 2016, of 7.1%, every year that is applied to the life insurance policy. What happens with whole life insurance dividends? Well, dividend rates adjust over time. Sometimes they remain constant for a number of years. Sometimes they adjust every year. It does depend on the company and such. But generally speaking, as the years pass, we will see that dividend rate adjust, which will have an impact on the performance. There are other things that impact the performance as well. But a basic illustration will generally assume that that dividend rate remains constant, which the one we're going to look at shows exactly that. If we fast forward to today, 2022, what's Mass Mutual's dividend interest rate? 6% flat. So we're going to look at what the dividend rate was each year, 2016, 17, 18, 19, all the way to current. But what you'll find is that it has gradually come down. So if this is you or if this is me and I'm trying to figure out, okay, was it worth it when I started the policy based on what I was originally shown or that original illustration? We want to look at the guarantees and a conservative dividend too, but looking at the best case scenario, was it worth it? Because this progresses through their thought process. So first question, how has it performed? How has it performed considering that the dividend rate has declined with Mass Mutual and just about every life insurance company out there? And then what do things look like moving forward? And when we look at things moving forward, that will be based on the 2022 dividend interest rate. So that is an in-force illustration. But first we'll look at the original illustration. Then we'll look at how it has performed year over year and how we get those values for full transparency as we pull them from the annual statement that's provided to the policyholder from the insurance company. And as the agent, we also have access to that information. So for this video, we took that data and I just exported it to Excel. So let's take a look. Before we jump to the Excel workbook, We'll start off with the original illustration and what we've got here. So individual started at age 63. And if we go to the bottom part of the illustration here, what do you notice? Female, 63 years old. What else do you notice here? MEC limit, just over 12K. How much is she paying in per year? $12,000 per year. Okay, so let's take a look here. We'll go back up. We've got the funding here, 12K per year for 7 years. That was the original plan. So when we look at the funding, annual outlay beginning year, $12,000 per year through the age of 70. Where's that $12,000 going? Money can go where? Toward the premium or toward the PUA rider. Now here the premium is at just about $3,400. In an ideal world, I'd want that premium as low as MassMutual will allow us to drive it, $1,200. In this particular case, because of the product selection and her age, along with her health rating, the premium was a bit higher. However, after analyzing different companies and products, the decision for a MassMutual Whole Life Legacy 10-pay product was still made. So that base premium is $3,400. We've got it minimized here. We can tell from the base face amount with this particular design. And then LISR, which stands for Life Insurance Supplement Rider, $115,000. What that is a term insurance rider that's attached to the policy. Does not cost $7,600, I promise you that much. But that $7,600 is broken up as far as the term cost is concerned, and then also money going toward PUAs. So here's what we want to look at here. 12K per year. Annual net outlay is the exact same thing. Funded for 7 years. And then what do you notice here? Annual surrender beginning year, $3,394. What does that match up with? This guy right here. So what this represents is the base premium that is still due, but she's not paying it. Her and her husband are not paying it in this particular example. How it's being paid is through the dividends and interest that are being produced in this policy that's covering the premium payment for it, or for the policy. Their out-of-pocket is 0 year in and year out. Now, in reality, when year 8 comes, what we want to consider is chopping that premium off altogether. If they say, I don't want to pay anything anymore, we would look at what is referred to as a reduced paid up option. This eliminates the premium. It will drop the death benefit as a result, and typically you'll see stronger cash value performance. What I'll say about this, why we don't see a reduced paid up illustrated here, is because at this point in time, MassMutual would not allow a reduced paid up to be illustrated on new business illustrations. You could do it with in-force illustrations back then, but not with new illustrations. So what we would do for individuals is always let them know that this is something you can do, a reduced paid up, and then illustrate it beginning year 2 through the in-force illustration software. But their new business software, their new illustrations, you couldn't do that. They have updated everything where now you can do it with new illustration reports, but that's why we have that surrender there. Personally, if someone says, I don't want to have to pay anything after 7 years, I like to chop that premium off. Now they can keep it on and keep paying, but I like to chop it off just to prevent confusion, and it gives them more money. So looking at this guy, what do we see here? Net cash value. There we go. Break-even point. Year 6 in this particular example. What I mean when I say that is 12,000 times 6 is what? $72,000 in total payments. Cash value, $72,758, assuming what? That the company's dividend rate of 7% remains constant all the way through. Has it remained constant? I wish. It has not. So here's what we just looked at, but on Excel. Here's the original illustration. What do you notice here? A couple things. First, on the far left, dividend rate, 7% forever. We know that it has not remained at 7%. Came down to 6.7, then 6.4, then 6.2, then 6%. You'll see the year over year. But it has gradually come down. But as we look at this, what I want to hit on first, if you're new to this, and see that dividend rate and think, you mean Mass Mutual is paying me that on my money? Not quite. I mean, they would say, yes, we're paying you this dividend rate, and any insurance company would. But a dividend rate is a gross rate. Annual IRR stands for internal rate of return, which represents the net growth rate year over year. So the first year, you pay in $12K, you've got just about $9,300, which is a loss there of almost $3,000, $2,700. That's how much you lost because you put in 12. You did not get 12 back. You've got access to about $9,300, which no matter how you slice that is over a 22% hit on your money. That higher base premium, that's why I don't like those higher premiums. However, in this case, they looked at it and says, we still want that because how we're planning out with this policy, seeing the different options, it makes sense. Okay, we just make sure that we're very thorough with the analysis. Second year, negative hit again. There we go. What do we see year over year? IRR gets stronger. When we stop the funding, we see a nice jump on the internal rate of return. Check that out. Look at that. 5.5% 1 year. Assuming the dividend rate stays the same forever, then you've got the cash value growth. That's the net dollar amount it's growing by each year. It does not assume your premium payments, which is very important in my opinion. Anytime I'm looking at my growth, I do not want to factor in the payments I've made because that's money I added to the policy. What did I receive from the insurance company? So let's take a look at the in-force illustration. So the in-force illustration is identical here, except for we're in policy year 6. We don't see years 1 through 5 because they're gone. They're in the past. We just ran this illustration a couple days ago. So annual outlay, why it's blank in year 6 is because the payment has already been made. Total cash value, the projection or the first illustration showed $72,000. Here's the death benefit over here. So we're behind the original illustration, not by much, but we are behind it. But let's look at this. $11.52. There's my dividend there. Do you remember what it was in year 7 on the issue illustration? $18.72. That's a difference there. And year in and year out, that dividends gradually come down. So let's take a look at a side-by-side comparison. What we've got here, original illustration on the left, we just looked at this, and then actual performance on the right for the first 6 years, and then entering year 7. Now we just talked to this individual, and what they actually elected to do was not pay anything in year 7. However, for this video, I do want to show what it would look like if it's paid so we can see a clean comparison side by side. So, year over year, let's take a look here. First year, there's the 7.1% dividend. Why is the actual cash value about $30 less than the illustrated cash value? Because with a life insurance illustration, they're accurate year to year. The reason why, remember the beginning of this video where we mentioned that the policy has an October start date, but we backdated the policy? Gotta verify the exact date. If you backdate a policy, or I should say, if you apply a PUA payment late, so you backdate to October, but make the actual payment in December, guess when the PUAs are applied? December. The base premium is applied to the backdated date, if that makes sense, but the PUA payments are not. So what that means is because that was paid, the PUA payment, just a couple months after the fact, when they actually are applied, or dividends and interest, in this case just the guaranteed in the first year is applied, it's slightly less money. So that's why the first year is different. Year 2, $12,000 payment is made. Dividend rate, 6.7%. Net cash value, $19,942, compared to the original illustration, $20,000 and change. What's your cash value difference? Scroll your eyes to the right, $168. Not a huge difference considering that $24,000 in total has been paid in, but it's a difference. As we look at it year over year, what happens with your dividend? Let's look at that first. It was 6.7, then 2 years at 6.4, then 6.2, and then 2021 and 2022, 6% flat. Whereas over here, 7% every single year. So as we look at it each year, you see that cash value gradually falling behind. If you're in a race, like you're running and you just see that person in front of you just gradually getting ahead, there's nothing you can do about it. In this case, they've got a stronger engine, or at least a stronger illustrated engine. But anyway, as we look at it, let's look at year 7. What do we see here? 84,000 in. More than $84,000 in cash value, just about 85. So that's their break even between years 6 and 7, whereas the original illustration was a clean year 6. And here's your IRR. Now what's interesting about this is when you look at year 8, you see a nice jump on the IRR with the example with the lower dividend. And the reason why goes back to that reduced paid up option. When we hit that kill switch and eliminate the premium, you'll see a drop in the death benefit, more so than the example to the left, which helps accelerate the cash value growth, which is nice. But it still will not catch up to the original example. But then we've got things moving forward. Notice I got a typo there. Let me correct that. Beautiful. Since this illustration assumes a 6% dividend all the way through, which things will change, and we track the actual performance. So then we've got the net cash value growth, and then the cash value difference, which depicts how much more or less in this case I've got with the actual policy compared to the original illustration. And this is, just for full disclosure, one of the weaker policies that we have written or we have placed. And the reason why does have to do really with the higher base premium. I don't want to just blame it on the individual's age and health rating, because we've worked with individuals that have even been older than this person and have been able to have a policy that has a clean 10% base premium. Then we see an earlier break-even point. We see a strong internal rate of return. Things perform a bit better when that base premium is lower. Again, when we're analyzing actual performance, not illustrations. But in this particular case, they still wanted to do it as we looked at all of the options. And still, I mean, it works based on their situation. And how I view it, and will always view it this way, is really see the different options, get a sample of historical performance, and then decide if it's a fit for you. If it is, great. We can help you all the way through. If it's not, no harm, no foul. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I always like taking a look at real policies and how they have performed. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. You can also email us if you'd like. Please hit the like button, subscribe for more. It does help us. And as always, I hope this helps. Thanks so much. Hey guys, Steve Parisi here. If you enjoyed the content you just saw, please subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell for future videos. If you'd like more information or to see some custom policies for yourself, feel free to call or email our offices at the contact information below.